She was beautiful, bold, and born to scandal. Margaret Campbell, the Duchess of Argyll, was a woman who defied every expectation of what it meant to be a lady of the British aristocracy. She dazzled high society, married into nobility, and lived a life of glittering wealth and privilege. But behind the pearls, the poodles, and the press photos was a woman with a secret, a woman whose private desires would soon explode into one of the most infamous sex scandals in British history. This is the shocking, seductive, and ultimately tragic story of the Dirty Duchess. Margaret Wigham was born in 1912 to a wealthy Scottish industrialist. She grew up amid opulence in both New York and London, attending elite finishing schools and charm academies. By the time she made her debut in London society in 1930, she was hailed as the most beautiful debutante of the season, crowned Deb of the Year. But beauty didn't buy innocence. Behind the velvet gloves and silk gowns, Margaret had already begun writing her own rulebook. At 15, she fell in love with a young David Niven. Yes, that David Niven, the future film star. The teenage affair resulted in a secret pregnancy. Her parents whisked her away for a quiet abortion in a French clinic. The affair ended, but Margaret never forgot how fleeting desire and reputation could be. She was courted by dukes and kings, princes and millionaires. One of her most passionate relationships was with aviation hero Glenn Kidston. When he died tragically in a plane crash, she wore mourning black for months. It was the first of many heartbreaks. Her first marriage was to American businessman Charles Sweeney, a union that gave her glamour, a New York penthouse, and an infamous incident in which thousands crowded the streets just to catch a glimpse of her wedding dress. But the marriage was rocky. Margaret suffered multiple miscarriages and a stillbirth. The couple eventually had 2 children, but the cracks in their relationship never healed. They divorced in 1947. Enter Ian Campbell, the 11th Duke of Argyll. Tall, brooding, and darkly charismatic, he seemed the perfect match. Except he wasn't. The Duke was a known drinker, gambler, and abuser, both of substances and of people. When they married in 1951, he was already financially ruined. Margaret, ever the romantic, used her fortune to restore Inverary Castle, the ancestral seat of the Argylls, pouring money into the crumbling estate in an attempt to rebuild not just a home, but a fairy tale. The fairy tale quickly collapsed into a nightmare. The Duke began accusing Margaret of infidelity. He ransacked her belongings, tapped her phone, and hired a locksmith to break into her private drawer. What he found would go on to destroy her reputation. Inside the drawer were Polaroid photographs. In one of them, Margaret, wearing nothing but her signature triple-strand pearl necklace, was performing an intimate act on a man whose head was not visible in the frame. The press dubbed him the Headless Man. Several other photos showed Margaret in erotic poses with different men. Some were lovers, some were friends, some were possibly strangers. The Duke filed for divorce in 1963, and the court case was a full-blown media circus. Margaret's love life was put on display like a tawdry tabloid. Her diary was read aloud in court. The Duke claimed she had affairs with at least 88 men, including 2 government ministers and 3 royals. The court labelled her a nymphomaniac, a predator, a deviant. But Margaret never named the Headless Man. Speculation raged. Was it Douglas Fairbanks Jr., a cabinet minister, a royal cousin? No one ever knew for sure. Despite the relentless public shaming, Margaret refused to bow her head. "I have always lived my life exactly as I wanted," she later said. And she meant it. After the divorce, Margaret's life spiraled. She was financially ruined, cast out from high society, and often mocked by the same press that once adored her. Still, she continued giving grand tours of her home in Belgravia, pointing to the infamous drawer and joking, "This is where the magic happened." Her final years were bleak. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Pimlico, relying on welfare, far from the mansions and castles she once ruled. Her health declined, her social circle vanished. She died in 1993 at the age of 80, largely forgotten. But her story didn't end there. In the decades since her death, Margaret Campbell's legacy has been re-evaluated. Some see her as a tragic figure, used, betrayed, and destroyed by a misogynistic system. Others see her as a symbol of female defiance, a woman who took pleasure in life, refused to be shamed for her sexuality, and lived unapologetically. And today her story has become a cult fascination. Books, articles, and even a BBC drama have resurrected her legend. The Dirty Duchess is now viewed not as a cautionary tale, but as a pioneer of sexual agency, flawed, yes, but fiercely herself. Because Margaret Campbell wasn't just a scandal. She was a woman who refused to be anyone but herself, always a poodle, only a poodle, and never without her pearls. Like and subscribe to queens behaving badly for more stories of royal women who broke the rules, bent the truth, and brought entire empires to their knees.